Class, this instructional video is going to talk to you about how to go through the planning process for your block environment for practicum. So I have loaded here on your screen a copy of the planning form. Know that there's a little bit of issue with it converting from a PDF. I apologize. It's going to look just a little bit different, but you'll need to have a copy of this form along with your age appropriate environmental rating scale. So we're going to use those in tandem or together. The reason being is that in order to be quality, the rating scale gives you the indicators up to a number 5, 6, or 7. So for state child development programs, we look at a number 5 as being good, and that's the minimum requirement. But for our practicum students, we really like you to strive for a 7 on the rating scale. So if it's the ITERS or the ECERS, it doesn't matter. You're going to go to the table of contents and you're going to look for the block environment, and then you would actually be turning to that page with your planning and referring to what are the criteria. And I know that you've all worked on that in 105, so it should be familiar to you. So let's just do some logistical conversation about the block form itself, and then I'm going to go over some tips that you would need to do. So first of all, I always recommend on these forms that you plan them in pencil. That way if you make a mistake, you can erase it easily. The final plan has to be very clean, which means there can't be any errors or scratch outs or squibbles. It needs to just be complete with no errors. So that's why pencil is a good choice. So you'll notice here that you have your planning team with the date. So the date actually would go here. Use your complete date that you planned it with your team. And then here it would say planning team, and you're going to put the first initial and last name of all the planning members. And if you need to double up names here, that's fine with me also. Then you're going to describe the area. So area would be in terms of location in the classroom, what furniture is available, are there any like rugs or platforms, things of that nature. So for example, you might say the block area is located on the right side of the classroom between the library and art. It consists of 2 shelves with a racetrack carpet that is in the middle, something to that effect. So then you can also see with the instructions here that you're going to list, there's 2 columns, you're going to list types of blocks, you need 3 of them, and then you're going to list 4 types of accessories. Now note that stars, you need to place a star next to any homemade materials, and all of our environments require homemade materials. And also we want you to be cognizant of diversity when you create your environment. So we want the environment to be able to reflect the child, the family, the community, the society that the child is being raised in. So any of the items that fit into a diverse category, you also would put a heart next to them. So we're putting a star next to recyclable materials, and we're putting a heart next to items related to diversity. The block space needs to have at least a minimum of 1 of each. Okay. So on the block side, you have to provide 3 different types of blocks, so we call them a set of blocks. Blocks are counted if they're not interlinkable. So if you're able to, say with Legos, interconnect those items, then they would not be classified as blocks. They actually would be classified as fine motor manipulative materials. So people ask me all the time, what's the number? How many numbers of blocks are in a set? Well, if you're working with the ITERS, with infants and toddlers, it's 10 or more. So each one of these 3 block sets would have to have 10 of each to be considered a set. If it's preschool, it depends on the age of the children. So, theoretically we would say 10 of each, but you might need to provide more depending on the needs of the children. So that's something you probably would want to consult for a recommendation from your lead teacher if you're in the preschool classrooms. So accessories. Accessories on this side of the house, you have to have certain criteria. So you have to have an accessory that's people-based. You have to have an accessory that's transportation-based, and you have to have an accessory that's animal-based. And then the last accessory is going to be up to you. That can be whatever you'd like to provide. So accessories need to enhance the block play. So the other thing that needs to be taken into consideration prior to writing up your plan is what items are always available to children in your classroom. So for example, the wooden unit blocks are always available to the children in the classroom, so you can't count those as one of your sets of blocks. These blocks must be new and creative for the children. Same thing with accessories. So if you say, I'm going to put multicultural people in the environment, you can't use the same multicultural people that were used by the other classroom, or if that classroom determines that those multicultural people always need to be there, then you would want to find something in addition to that. So everything we do needs to be based on informative, intentional teaching. So what you're doing here under child observation is you're writing objective observations that substantiate why you chose what you chose. So these should be have already happened. Somebody in your group has observed it. And if you decide that you're going to make them up, then that might be a problem, because I'm going to be asking you, why did you choose this? And you would have to be able to tie it back to those observations. So you're going to need 2 of them. And then also we have to have objectives. So what are children going to be learning from the experience? So you have to have 3 objectives. I would always encourage you to look at the preschool learning foundations or the infant toddler learning and development foundations when you're creating these. And they need to be clear, consistent, related to the activity, and about child development. So for example, one of your choices here might be that the child will be able to stack 5 to 10 blocks without them falling, or not stabilizing with hands, something to that effect. Know that with the block area, we would expect to see maybe a fine motor objective. It could also be a very social space, so social emotional development might be appropriate, cognition, math. So you can use a lot of different developmental domains, and we need to have 3 there. So this is also another area where the formatting is a little messed up. So before you finish turning in your plan to me, you always want to make sure that the items that you've chosen are non-toxic and safe. We want to make sure they're all in good repair. And this would go for once the environment's in play with the children, you want to double check that kind of, you know, as the children use the materials, because sometimes things can get broken or maybe aren't working correctly, or the way that the children are you thought they would use it, so you might need to make modifications. We also want to make sure we provide a variety. So we want children to have opportunities to have a variety of color, shape, texture, sound, and action. You need to make sure that your sets are complete with the materials, so make sure that you're not missing anything. The biggest part is that the shelves have to be clearly labeled and organized. So one of my suggestions is when you are actually creating these sets, take a picture of them so that you can print those pictures and you can use them to help set up the environment. And then additional materials may be needed to meet requirements of the classroom. So just know that, you know, we use the rating scale, we use good practice that we've learned in our classroom, and you also would want to ask yourself the questions on the grading rubric for the environmental the environmental planning. You want to use all of those together to come up with the best plan. So even if it's not listed, you might, I guess what I'm saying is you might have more materials that need to happen than what's actually listed on the form. So once you're done with this, you're going to put it into my box. Okay, or you can hand it to me personally in class, or if we're getting close to the timeline of due date, you might want to take a picture of it and email it to me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to review the content for it being appropriate or not, and I'm going to need to know who to contact, because I don't want to contact all of you. So appoint a point person. You could circle their name here in your list of who you want me to be in contact with. So I'm going to, I might have to ask for some revisions. Common revisions happen here and happen here. But ultimately I would approve it. And once I approve it, then you would need to make an appointment where all cohort members are responsible for the implementation of the setup of the environment. And that has to be coordinated with your lead teacher. So you're going to want to check in with them and see when a good time would be. And those times are always based on what's going to work for the children. So if you're struggling with your cohort on meeting at the same time to put it in place, or perhaps a time that works for the lead teacher, let me know and let's see if I can help facilitate that. So this is going to conclude our block environment instructional video. If you have continued questions, you're welcome to email me at tropke@hancockcollege.edu or talk to me in class. Please check your due dates. So this environment has to be ready to put into the classroom next week, which would be week 4, and that means that we need to get started. All right, so I look forward to reading your plans. Talk to you soon.